Welcome, traveler. If this is your first time listening, I highly recommend going back to episodes 1 and 2, where we cover the birth of the cosmos and the devastating war that followed. But if you already know your Astral Sea from your elemental chaos, then sit back, relax, enjoy, because today we're no longer talking about the fury of storms or the birth of demons. Today we speak of the survivors, the gods who stood through the Dawn War and shaped the world that followed. I am your host, the voice of the realms, and this is Lore Untangled. By now you know that the Dawn War was more than just a clash of cosmic powers. It was a crucible in which hundreds of deities and primordials found both their birth and their demise. Only few survived the elemental chaos and saw the birth of the first world. These are the gods that were present during the creation and destruction, and chose to rebuild after the Dawn War had ended. This episode has a bit of a different structure, and we will visit the stories from these surviving gods. In future episodes, we will dive deeper into each of these stories. You can see this episode as a sort of high overview. I hope this makes it way easier for you to follow. Let's start with a god whose name many players might know. The Soul Forger, Moradin. The battles of the Dawn War could not have been fought without strong weapons and armor, so somewhere between reality and imagination, a godly forge and anvil found existence by the pure will of Moradin himself. Though we know him as a Soul Forger, he had humble beginnings. For a god, of course. In the early days, he was simply a shaper, a being born to serve order, flame, and purpose. Where the other gods saw the chaos of the first world, they immediately felt protective over it. But Moradin saw something greater, a canvas ready to be built on. It's said that he forged his first hammer from a fallen star, cooling it in a river of molten gold, and with it he shaped armors for angels, shields for gods, and chains strong enough to bind the primordial's heart. When the Dawn War began, Moradin did not stand on the front lines. He stood behind them, behind his anvil. Every blade, every tool, every weapon that helped the gods hold their own against chaos bore the mark of his hand, and Moradin found many of his materials on the first world. To him, the primordial's creation was an endless supply of raw materials that just needed refining. Ogramok, the earth primordial, grew angrier with every strike of Moradin's hammer, and as a response he shattered mountains and cracked the sky. Moradin descended from his forge in fury. With a hammer glowing white-hot, he struck Ogramok and cast the earth primordial right into the depths. When the fire primordial Imix replied by flooding the first world in magma, Moradin carved trenches to divert it away from the mortals. He built walls of diamond to hide the advance of Imix and protect the life that he created. When the war ended, Moradin looked upon the dwarves and saw his people divided. Different clans and subraces like Dwergar and Darrow splintered, often due to betrayals or corruptions during or after the war. But Moradin forged the dwarves to be strong and united. Yet they fractured due to greed, pride, outside manipulation, and his forges that once rang with the song of creation now echoed with what could have been. In the wake of ruin, Moradin withdrew. He sealed himself in a plane of his own making, a realm of anvils, fire, and stone halls beyond measure. There he did not sleep. He simply created. And to this day, dwarves speak of him not just with reverence, but with kinship. Not as a distant god, but as the father of the forge. Every spark struck from an anvil, every oath sworn beneath a stone, is in honor of him. And some say, in the deepest mountain, beyond the deepest flame, his forge still burns. If you talk about dwarves, of course you're gonna have to talk about elves. The way the elves came to be is a story of Corellon Corellon was born out of a song. Within the Astral Sea, a soft, strange song could be heard. It's said that the universe yearned for this song to come to life. Corellon is that song. He is the embodiment of beauty made radiant, defiance wrapped in grace. Some say they were the first to dream, the first to wonder what could be, and in that wondering, they shaped. Corellon is never still. They are male, female, both, neither. They are a reflection of selfhood, unfixed. They are worshipped by those who create, who rebel, and who refuse to be caged. Every painting, every dance, and every song that defies expectation, those are Corellon's gifts. They trace stars across the skies with fingertips of starlight. They planted glades where no land yet stood, and breathed colors into existence that have no names in any tongue. Wherever they walked, life followed, not because Corellon commanded it, but because the world itself yearned to reflect their artistry. When the Dawn War erupted, Corellon did not seek battle, but neither did they flee from it. They fought not with fury but with elegance, and their blades shimmered like moonlight on still water. Their spells were sonnets, etched in light. Against the brute force of primordials, Corellon danced, redirecting lava with a wave of the hand, turning thunder into harmony, unraveling chaos with artistry. It was said that when Corellon sang, even angels stopped to listen. So it is said that the elves were born out of Corellon. Whilst battling the orc god Crunch, Corellon was wounded. Their ichor, God's blood, falling to the world below like rain. And where the droplet struck, the first elves emerged. Among the closest of the allies of Corellon was Erathis, the weaver of fate. A clever, lovely, and brilliant figure. She was their consort, their muse, and the keeper of secrets in the dark places. And it was she who betrayed them. Erathis plotted to supplant Corellon, to shatter their form and ascend in their place. Corellon, heartbroken, cast her down, and Erathis became Lolth, the Spider Queen, forever tangled in the web of her own ambition. After the war, Corellon withdrew into the Feywild, a realm of dream and chaos, shaped by their very breath. They walked among the Eladrin, the wild spirits of magic and beauty, and became more than a god. They became an ideal. And still, when the stars sing, and the wind shifts just right, some say you can hear them, humming the first melody before the world began. It would be unfair not to stop and take a look at Lolth, the betrayer below. As you by now know, Lolth used to have a different name. She was once a goddess of fate, beauty, and shadow under the name Erathis, the weaver of destiny. As a beloved consort of Corellon, she danced among the stars, spinning tapestries of possibility with fingers like silk and a voice like dusk. But in the silence between battles, something festered. Erathis watched as Corellon sang creation into being, watched as their light drew worship, love, and admiration, and slowly her pride twisted. She grew jealous of the admiration Corellon received. Why should she stand behind the one who shaped, when she could rule over all what they created? So she plotted. In secret, she wove a web not of fate, but betrayal. She drew in allies, whispered promises to dark things. She fashioned a blade meant to end Corellon and to unmake the god of beauty and claim their place. But in the final moment, her plan unraveled. Her betrayal came as a surprise to Corellon, who wept as Erathis was put before the council of the gods. When they passed their judgment, she was cast down and her name stripped away. In the abyss where she landed, she became Lolth, the Spider Queen, a demon lord of webs and deceit. Her body twisted into that of a monstrous spider, her grace curled into cruelty. Many gods would have perished, but she did not wither. She thrived. She seduced the Drow, the children of the stars, and turning them into her dark-hearted, faithful followers. Her underworld empire grew in silence, hidden beneath the mountains and above mortal fear. To this day, Lolth rules not with strength, but with whispers. Her priests spin lies as easily as she once spun fate. Her webs stretch far, into thrones, into temples, into hearts. Yes, she was a goddess once, but now she is something else entirely. We've talked about the dwarves and the elves, but there's one more race that I think we need to talk about in this episode. Humans. In the earliest days of creation, when the plains were raw and untamed, there was Pelor, the god of the sun, healing and agriculture, known across the worlds as the Dawnfather. Pelor's light did more than warm fields. It brought hope, mercy, and renewal. We read in Deities and Demigods that Pelor is the sun god of strength, healing, and agriculture, and he is one of the most widely worshipped deities amongst ordinary mortals. When the Dawn War erupted, he took up arms in defense of life and balance. And though no single weapon in his name is official in canon, Pelor is often imagined and described by his followers as wielding a spear or lance of sunlight, the very essence of his radiant domain. In many tales from the time of the war, Pelor is said to have stood at the forefront of battle. His light a shield for both divine and mortal allies. While some gods cloaked themselves in strategy or mystery, Pelor fought in the open, his presence rallying point against the chaos. Though Pelor is not specifically credited with any named battle in official texts, his role in preserving life and staving off annihilation during this era is universally accepted in the D&D myth. When the war ended, Pelor was not among those who sought dominion or vengeance. Instead, he turned his gaze downwards to the ashes of creation, where fledgling mortal races had suffered deeply. In Greyhawk lore, Pelor is revered for guiding humanity and teaching them to plant and settle and grow. Pelor is the sun god, a deity of strength and healing, revered especially by common folk. He is credited by helping early humans settle and build. In Exandria, he is likewise revered as the Dawnfather, and it was Pelor who helped seal away the betrayer gods during the Calamity. In Explorer's Guide to the Wildemount, we read that the Dawnfather guided mortals to their freedom and helped banish the evil gods. After the war, his divine domain shifted to include mercy, rebirth, and community. Temples to Pelor are typically open air, humble in design, but filled with warmth, food, and kindness. He is worshipped not only by kings and knights, but also by farmers, healers, midwives, and those who endure hardship. Even in settings where Pelor does not appear, such as the Forgotten Realms where Lathander fulfills a similar role, his name endures in tales across the multiverse. And even now, when the sun breaks the horizon and darkness retreats, the faithful whisper, Pelor still watches. You cannot talk about the surviving gods without talking about these two. Before dragons had names, before kingdoms rose or mortal tongues dared say prayer, there were two. Bahamut, the platinum dragon, and Tiamat, the five-headed queen. Siblings, rivals, and reflections of each other. They are amongst the oldest beings in the multiverse, not born in the astral sea like many gods, but shaped by the raw chaos of creation. Touched by divine purpose and bound to forever be the fate of dragonkind. In Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, we read about Bahamut and Tiamat, and that they are the oldest of the dragon gods, embodying the ideals of justice and tyranny. And during the Dawn War, both Bahamut and Tiamat played pivotal roles. Bahamut allied with the gods, lending his might in defense of order, justice, and creation. Around him gathered the first metallic dragons, of gold, of silver, of bronze, noble in heart and mighty in form. While Tiamat and her chromatic brood fought for their own end. Tiamat was ambitious and cunning, and initially fought alongside the gods as well, But her loyalty was always transactional. She offered power for reward, conquest for compensation. Her chromatic dragons, the red, black, green, blue, and white ones, soar across the skies like living storms. In Fizban's Treasury of Dragons we read Tiamat is the mother of evil dragons and a tyrant without equal. She is worshipped by those who seek power at any cost. Some tales claim she betrayed her primordial kin to gain divine favor. Others suggest she simply played both sides, as was her nature. Regardless, the gods granted her dominion, temples, and influence for a time. But Tiamat's hunger is unending. When she reached too far, some say she was seeking the tablets of fate. Gods could no longer abide her ambition. Bahamut, torn between justice and sorrow, led the divine host against her, and the clash between them shook the heavens. Bahamut is often called upon to oppose Tiamat directly, and their enmity is eternal. Tiamat was cast down into Avernus, the first layer of the 9 hells, where she remains imprisoned to this day. There she rules as a dark goddess of tyranny, greed, and pride, worshipped by power-hungry mortals, feared even by fiends. In the Rise of Tiamat, we read that she has long resided in Avernus, where she plots and rages, commanding the loyalty of evil dragons and cultists alike. Bahamut, in contrast, ascended to Mount Celestia, where he resides in a glimmering palace of crystal and light, surrounded by 7 golden halls, each representing a virtue of justice, wisdom, honor, and mercy. In Deities and Demigods, we read that Bahamut dwells in Celestia and appears as a noble platinum dragon. He is revered by those who champion good and law. He is known to walk the mortal world in disguise, sometimes as a humble old man, sometimes as a silver dragon, but always guiding, judging, and protecting. He teaches that the justice must be tempered with compassion, and that even tyrants may be redeemed, and that power must serve the weak, not dominate them. Yet even in his peace, he carries the sorrow of his sister's fall, for he knows as long as mortals crave domination, Tiamat's whispers will find them. Before the first question was asked, before stars were charted or spells written, there was Ioun, goddess of knowledge, prophecy, and skill. She did not claim dominion over war, law, or creation. Her domain was understanding. Ioun is the god of knowledge, skill, and prophecy. She is revered by seers, sages, and all those who seek learning and truth. Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes describes her as the god of knowledge, skill, and prophecy. It says that she is revered by seers and sages and all those who seek learning and truth. She gave name to things, separating meaning from chaos, where Moradin forged stone and steel, and Corellon sculpted magic into beauty. Ioun comprehended. She mapped the invisible ley lines of the multiverse and etched the truth of magic into the fabric of reality. Her mind was vast, filled with wonder, the awe of discovery, and the joy of patterns revealing themselves. During the Dawn War, when the gods rose to fight the chaotic primordials, Ioun's role was not on the battlefield, but behind the scenes. She was among the first to foresee the coming conflict, reading the tremors of the astral sea and warning her fellow deities. Ioun's teachings emphasize reason, knowledge, and the gathering of lore. She once foresaw the rise of the Great War and acted to preserve the knowledge from its ruin. In the plane above, we read that Ioun's teaching emphasized reason, knowledge, and the gathering of lore, and that she once foresaw the rise of the Great War and acted to preserve knowledge from its ruin. So she built the Vault of Ages, a mystical archive hidden beyond time and space, where truths too dangerous or profound to utter were preserved. Within were scrolls of forgotten language, names never meant to be spoken, and spells that could alter the planes themselves. Even gods like Corellon and Pelor sought her counsel. Ioun holds dominion over the accumulated knowledge of the cosmos, and her words are heeded by even the greatest gods. In the Explorer's Guide to Wildermount, we read that Ioun holds dominion over the accumulated knowledge of the cosmos, and her words are heeded even by the greatest gods like Corellon and Pelor. But the primordials feared her, not for her power, but for her insight. One, lost to name, known in some scrolls as Nihil, struck her with an assault of anti-meaning, a wound of unmaking, and her divine mind was shattered. Her presence flickered across the plains, and many of the temples and libraries she created were destroyed. Her followers were scattered. Though her injury was beyond mortal comprehension, Ioun endured. She retreated into her domain, the Athenaeum of Knowing, a plain of floating tomes, starlit shelves, and candlelight that never fades. And from this hidden sanctuary she watches, gathers and weaves understanding into the cosmos once more. Her followers believe that Ioun splintered pieces of herself into scrolls, riddles, and living minds. Prophets, visionaries, and scholars sometimes speak truths they could not have learned on their own. These would be whispers from the knowing mistress. A quote from the Explorer's Guide to the Wildermount is, "Her voice comes not in shouts, but in the sudden understanding of a secret long buried." To serve Ioun is not to bow, but to seek. Her clerics are devoted to unveiling truth, however painful that may be. Her paladins are known as seekers, warriors who strike down ignorance like a monster in the dark. She rarely speaks, but when a mortal uncovers a truth too great or too strange, too ancient for this world, they say she leaves behind a single word: remember. Out of all the gods, Erathis is the one that stands apart the most. In the D&D 4e player handbook, you read Erathis is the unshakable voice of civilization and law, the builder of cities and the bringer of structure to the world. She is said to have been born from the first fulfilled promise, when one god swore to protect another, and kept their word. That vow became her breath, and from that moment she embodied order shaped by intent, and structure forged through unity. Where others saw conquest or desolation, Erathis saw the framework of possibility. A ruined battlefield could become a road. A scattered people could become a nation, and for Erathis, conflict was not the end, but the crucible, the fire in which civilization is tempered. She wore no crown, yet bore a queen's authority. Her armor was plain, but unbreakable. Her laws carried weight not through domination, but through clarity. During the Dawn War, Erathis stood not as a destroyer, but as a builder. In the plane above, Secrets of the Astral Sea, we read that in the war against the Primordials, Erathis was one of the chief strategists and peacekeepers among the gods. She forged the first divine codices, blueprints for how gods could shape planes, draw borders between realms, and form alliances that would endure beyond the storm of battle. While others raised armies, Erathis raised infrastructure. Roads, citadels, councils. Some myths say she once halted the tide of primordial destruction, not through war, but through design, building a fortress so elegant, so logically ordered, that the chaos broke against it like waves on a seawall. When the war ended and many gods withdrew in exhaustion or mourning, Erathis began again. She laid the first stone of the first city. She did not give mortals with fire or steel, but with governance, the principles of guilds, councils, charters, and common law. In the 4e Dungeon Master's Guide, Erathis is credited with guiding the rise of mortal civilization, cities, governments, legal systems, and collaborative invention. To the humans, she gave the idea of cities bound by shared ideals. To the dwarves, she taught the art of drafting oaths that would last through generations. And even the elves, known for poetry and personal freedom, found value in her treaties. Erathis is no gentle matron. She demands progress. A city that stagnates, that decays into tradition without purpose, is no better to her than one that burns. Her symbol, a gear, ever turning, reminds her followers that society must evolve, refine, and elevate itself towards shared strength and justice. But beware the tyrant who claims her name while silencing dissent, or the zealot who turns her laws into cages. For the same laws that build cities can also be rewritten, and when the balance is broken, the gears grind, because Erathis watches, and what she builds, she can also dismantle. And the Dawn War had quite some casualties. Many gods did not survive. Some are remembered in whispers, others not at all. One of those gods was Amoth, the god of justice and mercy. He stood against a primordial known as Telos. Though his blade struck true, Telos fell atop him, crushing the god beneath a mountain. Amoth's worship faded soon after. His temples are ruins, and his name is a cautionary tale that even the just may fall. Nerul was the original god of death, saw the chaos of the war as an opportunity. He sought dominion over all dying things, mortal and divine. But his hunger grew too great. The other gods turned on him, and it was the Raven Queen who took his mantle, casting him into a nameless void. Some say Nerul still exists, drifting between realms and awaiting resurrection. Lanishrae was a goddess of starlight and silence, and she simply vanished. One day her constellation went dark, and some scholars believe she was devoured by the abyss itself. Others say she sacrificed herself to seal a rift in the astral sea. Her worshippers still wait in quiet places, hoping to hear her voice once more. And there were others, gods of wind and time, trickery and fate, but these are forgotten, lost or consumed. Their echoes remain broken artifacts, abandoned altars and dreams that fade with the morning. There were many more gods that all fought and fell, and they are all worth looking into. Maybe one day we will start a god series where we handle them one by one, but for now, I fear this is all you're gonna get. So how do you use these gods in your own tales? Well, start by remembering that these gods are far from perfect. They are survivors. They made hard choices and lost loved ones, and carry trauma from a war we can barely imagine. That means their clerics and champions may wrestle with hard truths. Maybe a Moradin worshipping paladin is tasked with guarding a forge sealed since the Dawn War. Perhaps a rogue stumbles upon an Ioun fragment, a memory that was never meant to be seen. Or a party must negotiate between Bahamut and Erathis, whose visions of justice collide in grey morality. Remember too that gods have rivals, siblings, regrets. A temple to Pelor might have once been a temple to Therisden. A city founded in Erathis' name might be infiltrated by agents of Lolth. The first gods shaped the world, but they are not its masters. Anyway, if you're interested in this subject and want to read more, there are 3 books that I definitely recommend. The first is Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. It tells you about gods, demons, and the fractures of the divine history. The second book is the Dawn War Pantheon. It's a 4E setting that's a fascinating take on the gods shaped by the war. Then you have the Mythic Odyssey of Theros, if you want to explore more god-mortal relationships in mythic fashion. And of course, I will always plug this and I will keep plugging this, the Forgotten Realms Wiki, which continues to be an invaluable resource. Thank you so much for tuning into Lore Untangled. If this episode inspired a new character idea or helped you flesh out your pantheon, or just scratched that divine lore itch, I'd love it if you shared it, reviewed it, or left a comment. It means the multiverse to me. I've been your host, the voice of the realms. Until next time, keep your stories sacred, your temples tall, and keep your gods complicated.